Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to look at how to transform ISO 14001-2026 Clause 7.4 from what might look like just another dry administrative hurdle into a literal operational lifeline. Look, if you're working with environmental management systems, you already know the deal. Having a slick plan on paper, that's the easy part. But making sure that plan actually breathes life into your daily operations, well, that's a whole different ballgame. So we're going to break down how structured planning, rock-solid implementation, and sharp auditing can actually make these communication channels work for you.
Because honestly, what good is a zero-waste policy if the folks on the facility floor have literally never heard of it? Think about the sheer chaos of poor communication. You've got an organization committing to zero waste. The boardroom is popping champagne, right? But down on the floor, operators are just tossing hazardous and non-hazardous materials into the exact same bins. Why? Simply because the communication channels completely failed. And without that effective communication, those environmental responsibilities are dead on arrival. Your risks stay hidden, and your compliance obligations, they are fundamentally compromised.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to logically unpack Clause 7.4, kind of like the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. We'll hit the EMS communication lifeline, designing the strategy, internal and external channels, documenting communication evidence, and finally, look at it all from the lead auditor's perspective. All right, starting off with Part 1, the EMS communication lifeline. Let's look at this foundation and see how communication acts as that critical bridge connecting high-level policy right down to ground-level operational performance.
This ISO definition right here, this is basically our core rulebook. Without a structured process to establish, implement, and document internal and external communication, an EMS just falls apart. Period. The standard views communication not just as chatting or sending out a memo, but as a rigid, systematic process. It's the only way to ensure your environmental policy, your objectives, risks, and performance outcomes are clearly transmitted, actually interpreted, and then acted upon. It's literally the glue connecting your leadership, operational teams, external suppliers, and regulatory authorities. It bridges everyone, so we're all playing by the exact same environmental rules.
Moving right along to Section 2, Designing the Strategy. Now, what's genuinely fascinating about building this communication bridge is that it requires a highly specific blueprint. You can't just cross your fingers and hope the right info gets to the right people. You have to engineer it. The standard explicitly requires you to map out your strategy using these 4 W's so information moves systematically. Number 1, what needs to be communicated? Are we talking about the core policy, monitoring results, or maybe a shift in compliance obligations? 2, when communication should occur. Like, is it a monthly dashboard update, an annual report, or a drop-everything emergency spill alert? 3, with whom communication should take place. This forces you to pinpoint both internal staff and external interested parties, like regulators or local communities. And finally, 4, how communication should be performed. Digital portals, quick toolbox talks, formal regulatory filings. By locking down these 4 questions, you completely shift your EMS from a frantic, reactive scramble into a proactive, finely tuned system.
Okay, Section 3, Internal and External Channels. Let's check out the structural pillars of this bridge and contrast the 2 distinct directions our communication has to flow. Notice the clear duality here. Internal communication is all about operational control. It ensures your workforce is aligned, aware, and most importantly, safe. It makes sure environmental considerations are baked right into everyday operational decisions. I mean, if your procurement team is picking suppliers, they absolutely need to know your environmental standards, right? On the flip side, external communication is all about transparency and compliance. It's how you prove your accountability to the outside world, showing regulators, investors, and the local community exactly what your environmental impacts are.
And because of that duality, you need completely different tools for different audiences. I mean, a quick internal toolbox talk on the floor has a very different flavor than a formal regulatory submission. For your internal folks, you might lean on visual digital dashboards, things that flash real-time energy metrics or waste stats. But for the external crowd, you're dealing with rigid sustainability reports, regulatory disclosures, or highly structured community consultations. The core message always has to be accurate and consistent with your data, but the channel and the format, they've got to be custom-tailored to whoever is actually on the receiving end.
But here is the catch. Let's look at how these channels have to align. If internal and external channels don't match up perfectly, disaster strikes.
Take a hypothetical wastewater treatment facility. Internally, management has to tell the floor operators the daily chemical dosing limits, right? Externally, they're handing over compliance reports to the regulators. Well, if those internal instructions don't strictly align with the external regulatory thresholds, the operators might think they're crushing it, doing a fantastic job, while the facility is simultaneously racking up massive compliance violations. Those internal and external channels, they are two sides of the exact same coin.
Which brings us to Section 4, Documenting Communication Evidence. Because designing this bridge is great, but you need the mortar of documented evidence to actually hold the whole thing together.
I really want to highlight this concept. Undocumented communication is essentially a rumor in the eyes of an auditor. Seriously, if you can't prove that a conversation happened, as far as an audit goes, it simply never occurred. No way around it. ISO 14001:2026 leans heavily on documented information to verify that your planned processes are actually happening in the real world. You could honestly be the best verbal communicator in your industry, but without a paper trail or a digital footprint to back it up, you've got zero traceability.
So, here's exactly what an auditor is hunting for, to verify that your channels are actually functioning and legally compliant. They want records proving that information didn't just go die in someone's inbox. We're talking signed training attendance logs, which prove a contractor actually understood your site's soil contamination controls. Or management review meeting minutes, proving performance data actually made it up to leadership. Or regulatory submission receipts, verifying you hit that external reporting deadline. This documentation right here, this is your absolute armor during an assessment. And finally, Section 5, the lead auditor's perspective. Let's actually look through the auditor's lens to see how this communication bridge holds up to a real-world stress test.
Auditors aren't just hunting for missing paperwork. They're looking for systemic failures. Take this first non-conformance example. Contractors doing excavation work were never informed about soil contamination controls, and it led to improper waste handling. It's crazy how easily this happens. This is a classic supply chain communication failure. The internal procedures completely failed to reach the external contractors doing the actual digging. The company had gorgeous, well-documented soil management procedures, but because they failed to define who communicates this to the contractors and how it gets done, the contractors just treated hazardous soil like regular dirt. An auditor is going to instantly flag this under Clause 7.4 because the communication process itself was fundamentally broken, leading directly to an environmental impact.
Or look at example 2. During a chemical spill, the organization failed to notify environmental authorities promptly because the protocols were unclear. In a high-stakes emergency, a missing communication protocol isn't just an oopsie on a spreadsheet. It can trigger massive legal penalties and serious environmental destruction. Remember those 4 W's? Well, in this emergency, the what and the when totally collapsed. Employees literally didn't know who was authorized to contact the regulator, which delayed the whole response. When lead auditors review those post-emergency records and see authorities weren't notified in the required timeframe, that is an immediate, critical red flag screaming that your communication structure failed. And here are the most common breakdowns auditors routinely run into. Notice a pattern? They almost all stem from treating communication informally. Disconnects between environmental managers and floor workers happen because the info isn't baked into routine workflows. A lack of documented evidence means absolutely no one is being held accountable. These nonconformances aren't just minor paperwork errors. They are giant spotlights revealing deep weaknesses in your organizational governance and leadership engagement.
So keep this number in your head, 7.4. It is the ultimate stabilizing force, making sure your environmental commitments actually survive contact with reality. Clause 7.4 is the circulatory system of your EMS. It guarantees that the brilliant policies drafted up in the boardroom actually make it all the way down to the factory floor, and that the performance data from that floor accurately makes its way back out to the regulatory agencies.
Which leaves us with this final question. Ask yourself honestly, is your organization's EMS communication a sturdy, documented bridge, or is it basically just a rumor waiting to fail an audit? Take a hard look at your internal and external channels. Double-check those 4 W's. And most importantly, make sure you've got the documented evidence to back it all up. Thanks for joining me for this explainer on Clause 7.4. Now, go build those bridges.